Role-playing games, or more commonly known as RPGs, have been around almost since the dawn of time. Okay, maybe not that long, but believe it or not, there was a time when the RPG was not as popular as it is today. The RPG genre started with tabletop games such as Dungeons & Dragons. These games left most of the action up to the imagination. Eventually, home computers started to gain some popularity with the Apple II, and in the 80s, the Commodore VIC-20 and the Commodore 64. With these computers came games such as the Ultima series and the Wizardry series. Both of the series mentioned are considered to be the blueprint for all RPGs to follow, although they both don't come without flaws. They're each extremely primitive in what you can do, and when they actually do work, as computers like the Apple II and C64 tend to die out pretty quickly, they're slow and choppy. But in context, these games were groundbreaking and revolutionary, as most games involved just shooting things or just jumping around. Enter 1986. The Nintendo Entertainment System is gaining steam with its games like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Castlevania. On May 27, 1986, the world was introduced to Dragon Warrior, a port of Dragon Quest on the Famicom. The story is as basic as it can get for an early RPG. Basically, there's a princess to save, a dragon lord to exterminate, and a world to save. Sound pretty familiar? Yep, the best thing about early RPGs is that the story is so cut and dry. The hero of the game, which is you, controls like any top-down 8-bit character should, but this game also uses a menu system similar to that of Earthbound on the Super Nintendo. There's commands for talk, stairs, spell, door, and even take, so don't worry, you've got all your bases covered. If you've played games like Final Fantasy, you should have no problem understanding what to do and how to progress. For those of you who've showed up late to the party, Dragon Warrior, like Final Fantasy, has a level system, which as you attain higher levels, the higher your stats like attack and defense get. The whole game also runs on an XP system, which is the number of points you need to progress to the next level. Enemies in the game drop XP, so the more you fight, the more XP you get. Some enemies drop more XP than others, but I'd be careful as some enemies will really wipe the floor with you if you're not a high enough level. It's impossible not to mention the music in this game. Although it repeats, I really never grow tired of it. It has a real swords and sorcery element to it, which I find appealing. The graphics are okay. I can see what everything is. Overall, the graphics aren't bad, but they aren't great. The problems I have with this game really are kind of the same problems I have with the Ultima and Wizardry series, although they aren't as glaring as Dragon Warrior was released a whole 5 years after Ultima and Wizardry. Another problem I have is that the majority of your time spent playing the game will definitely be spent grinding for levels. I have no problem with grinding, as I had to do it in Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VII, but with those games there's more to do than just walk around and grind. Now I know that those games came out almost a whole decade after the original Dragon Warrior, but I would have liked to see some other things to do in the game, no matter how primitive the other things would probably be. Overall, Dragon Warrior is a good game for those of you who are curious enough to see where home console RPGs got their start. But don't expect a masterpiece like you would with the Final Fantasy series. This is Dragon Warrior for the Nintendo Entertainment System.